that President Trump's stance on the North Korea-U.S. summit, does not meet the world's desire for peace and stability, both in the world and on the Korean Peninsula. He goes on to say the tremendous anger and open hostility that President Trump mentioned in the letter he means this morning is just a backlash in response to a unilateral denuclearization being pushed ahead of the planned North Korean-U.S. summit. So, to sum that up, Kim Jong-un is saying he wants to talk, he's open to talks, but it is very clear from this statement that the unilateral denuclearization is not where they want to go. And he also says that that's not what the world wants. So perhaps he's looking for a deal like Iran got, where there is a partial denuclearization and a monitoring process. Whether or not that will bring the United States and President Trump back to the table remains to be seen. But as soon as we get more on that, we will certainly bring it to you.
There's power in love. There's power in love to help and heal when nothing else can. There's power in love to lift up and liberate when nothing else will. Now, the power of love is demonstrated by the fact that we're all here. Two young people fell in love, and we all showed up.
That was the American bishop who stole the show at last weekend's royal wedding. Social media interest during the event peaked during his sermon, with folks sending a reported 40,000 tweets a minute. His message of love resonating with the global audience and seeming to catch the stiff upper lip Brits a little bit off guard. Earlier this evening, I spoke to Michael Curry, the first African-American to serve as presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. What do you make of that? You know, the fact that this was so watched across the pond, as we say, in the United States and in Great Britain. 29 million people watched your message. What was it that you really wanted to say when you had all of that attention?
You know, in all honesty, I really did want to say and emphasize that what Jesus of Nazareth was teaching us when he taught us to love God and to love our neighbor, and said it all depends on love of God and love of neighbor. That really is the key. Jesus was telling us that that's the key to life itself. And I wanted to share that message in such a way that we might actually begin to hope that, you know what, if we love God and love each other, we actually might be able to change the world for the good and come together and do that.
It's a very strong...
You know, in a strange kind of way, the couple helped us to do it.
Yeah, they did. You're absolutely right. They brought a lot of people together, and I thought it was such a beautiful melding of two very different cultures that have a lot of similarities. But were there moments when you sort of looked up at that crowd, because as the camera was catching people around the room, there was definitely a feeling of like, well, we don't hear this every day in St. George's.
Oh, let me tell you, I'm an old pastor. I've been ordained for getting close to 40 years, and every congregation is just like that. There are all sorts of things going on in any congregation when you preach. On a typical Sunday morning, there's a little baby on the floor playing, and the mother's worrying about the baby. I mean, there's always stuff going on in a congregation, but I can tell you, people were listening, and they were kind and gracious after the service, and we were there together.
That's great. Now, you are going to be part of a service and a protest near the White House tonight. And you have said that in America, we're deeply concerned about the resurgence of white nationalism, racism, and xenophobia. What's the mission tonight? What do you hope to say and accomplish?
Sure. Sure. And one of the things we really have wanted to emphasize, it's not a protest. It's actually, we're having a worship service, a recommitment to some core Christian values, and a confession that we're calling Reclaiming Jesus. And then we're walking in what we're calling a silent candlelight procession to the White House, where we will deliver and give the confession to them. And then we're going to pray. We're going to pray for our president and leaders and those in authority. We're going to pray for our country. We're going to pray for the poor and all those who are in need of help. And we're going to pray that we can find a way to help and come together as a country.
That's a good message. We do need to come together. And
it is.
I just want to add, I know the president has asked to do a summit on race, and he's invited Colin Kaepernick to come to the White House to bring together these ideas to discuss. Do you recommend that Colin Kaepernick go to that? And is that something that you would want to be a part of?
This is the first I've heard of it, so I don't really know anything about it in any details. But what I can tell you is that we must find ways to come together across our divides. That is the way of love. Look, the reality is that at that wedding last week, we came together because of the love between those two people. And that brought us together across national boundaries. It brought us together across political divisions and differences, brought us together across religious differences. It brought us together even for a few moments. What would happen if we make a commitment as a nation? We are going to learn to love our neighbor as ourselves, and we're going to do it for real. Then we come together across our differences and find ways, solutions to our common problems, but we do it from the common values that we share, one of which is that every one of us is a child of God, made in God's image. Now, how we do that specifically, better minds than I can do that.
I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful message, Pastor, and I really appreciate you being with us today, Bishop. I just got to ask you, I know you just heard about it, but if the president were to reach out to you, since you're so prominent now, would you say yes to that? Would you go to the White House to discuss these issues?
Well, I will figure that out if I'm asked.
Okay. All right. We will follow that.
I'll
thank
reach
you
out
so
to
much.
anybody's hand.
We hope you'll be invited there. It'd be interesting
right.
to see. And we thank you so much for being here today, Bishop Curry. Thank you very much for your message of love.
God bless you.
God bless you. Our thanks to him. Great talking to him tonight. So more on North Korea's response that is breaking as we speak to President Trump.